and welcome to The Charity Show, the podcast for charity insiders by charity insiders. Please rate, follow or subscribe to us on your usual podcast platform. And here's what's coming up in episode 17.
Mark Zuckerberg has followed Musk with profound changes to Meta. So it's early days so far, but Zuckerberg's announcement this week that the platform is radically scaling back on its content moderation and leaving it to, quote, community notes, similar to the approach that Musk has taken with X. But the implications for third sector are potentially huge.
We want to hear all your charity achievements, all your charity firsts, all those amazing things that you're doing, things you've got planned for the year ahead, things you're hoping to achieve, things you're doing at the charity over the course of the next 12 months.
I do feel, especially in the UK, they get a really bad rap, especially in the press. You know, they either haven't given too much, or they've given to the wrong charity, or they're doing it for their own, egos or wrong reasons. And I don't see any of that. The people I've dealt with all along have just been the loveliest, most genuine, kind people.
Obviously, we live in a digital age. We talk a lot about digital in terms of what we can do to market digitally and emails and so on and so forth. But you're right, a simple card in the post and the RNLI ended up with a £1.4 million gift. Hello, Happy New Year and welcome to episode 17 of The Charity Show with me, Tim Beynon, Head of Marketing Engagement at Firefighters Charity.
And me, Piers Townley, PR Manager at the Brain Tumour Charity.
So Piers, good to see you. We're back. It's 2025. I know we're pretty much halfway through January already, but Happy New Year. Good to see you. Did you have a good break?
Yeah, really good, Tim. Really good. As we talk about it, goes so quick. So quick. You want some time to switch off, and then you want some time to cook the Christmas dinner, and you want some time to go and see people. It's gone in a flash. And you're right, nearly halfway through January, and it's full steam ahead. So, yeah, straight back into it. But good. Didn't manage to switch off totally. There was a cheeky little check-in with emails, a little cheeky check-in with charity, social media. It's very hard, I think, from any sort of comms team, perhaps working in all sorts of teams in the charity. It's very hard to switch off in this 24/7 culture that we sometimes have. But yeah, managed that fairly well. This week, this first week or so back has been, as I say, full on. We've got our magazine that the Brain Tumour Charity does, called The Grey Matters, coming out in March. Is the new issue, and that's the Brain Tumour Awareness Month, BTAM as we call it. It's a big hero campaign awareness month for the brain tumour community in the UK, and obviously our Grey Matters hits there, and we're doing an interview with one of our high profile supporters, the Hollywood actress Amy Nuttall. She's supported us for over a year now since she's losing her mum to a brain tumour, so we've got a big old photo shoot with her next week. So it's just running around like headless chickens, making sure that all the factors are in place so this photo shoot goes well. But yeah, so that's just been dominating my first week back. How about you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, likewise. It takes me a little while to sort of get back into things after Christmas. It kind of is such a weird time, isn't it? And then when you get back in January, it does take a little while to get back into the flow of things. But had a good break like yourself. It was nice just to escape a little bit. But yeah, as you inevitably do, you always just keep a little eye on what's going on. And also all credit to my team who did a great job over the course of Christmas of pre-scheduling all the content that goes out on social. So, it was lovely to see, every day or something, especially around Christmas and New Year, some, suitable, appropriate messaging going out to show our support and remind fire community that we're here for them throughout the period and all that kind of stuff. And that was all down to some very fantastic sort of comms work and pre-planning and scheduling in advance, which I can't take any credit for at all. So that was great and good to see. But Christmas itself for me, lovely, nice and relaxed. Apart from the entire family getting norovirus on New Year over the course of New Year, which is pretty grim. But apart from that, yeah, it was not too bad. Thanks. It was a good break and good to be back. But yeah, it's also been good, I think, in January, as is inevitably always the case, just kind of to have a think about the year ahead and think what we've got coming up. And for us on the charity show here, I think it's a great opportunity, and this is our first episode back in 2025, just to remind everybody, all our listeners, that we're really, really keen to share your stories as well. We want to hear all your charity achievements, all your charity firsts, all those amazing things that you're doing, things you've got planned for the year ahead, lessons you've learned along the way, things you're hoping to achieve, or new things you're doing at the charity over the course of the next 12 months. If you'd like to sort of spotlight an area of your work or champion some of your fantastic people, then please do get in touch. Let us know what's going on with you. All the links are in the show notes, and come on to the show. Tell everyone else about it. Yeah, be a part of the show. We're looking forward to it.
Major donor philanthropy is crucial to income generation for many charities, but across fundraising teams is perhaps one of the longest and trickiest donor pipelines to manage. Where do you find your major donors? How do you approach them? How do you nurture them once you've identified them? And how do you ensure that your major donors hang around for the long term? It's not exactly a world Tim or I know a great deal about, but Sally Williams, now Head of Philanthropy at the Royal College of Physicians, certainly does. We caught up with her at the tail end of last year when she was still in her previous role as Senior Philanthropy Manager at the Institute of Cancer Research. Hi Sally, welcome to the show. It's good to talk to you today about all things philanthropic. I have to be careful when I say that. I always get my tongue.
So many people cannot say it. Trust me. You're in a good community.
You look at it and then it goes, doesn't it? So tell us a little bit about your background first of all, because you started off in the armed services, didn't you? Spent many years actually in the armed services. Talk us through that.
Well, it seems like a whole lifetime ago now. I served for 24 years in the British Army. Joined when I was 19, back in the early 90s. Served all over the world, some nice places, Canada and Kenya was quite nice, and London, but also the trickier places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So yeah, all over the place really. But 24 years was quite a long time.
It sounds like a small question because I'm going to ask you the obvious thing. I'm sure it's a bigger question really. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy your armed service?
I did. I expected to do about 6 years when I joined. I thought I'll travel and meet people, and then it sort of went on from there really, and I thought, well, I'm okay at this. It's quite good. I quite enjoy it. The pay's all right. And then 6 years turned into 24 years, and that was it. But after 22 years as a full career, and you get a military pension and things like that. So I'd done enough time. I'd got married by then, and it was starting to drag a little bit. My mum passed away very suddenly, and I thought, no, if I don't leave now, I never will, and I need to do something different.
So why the third sector? I mean, it's a completely different pace of life.
It is. I just couldn't imagine ever working for a profit company. I just couldn't imagine it in myself in that position. I think I still feel as though I'm serving and doing good by being in the charity sector. It's a wonderful space to be in. I mean, you both know that the people in the sector are incredible. It's doing amazing things. I'd always done a bit of fundraising through my military career, as you do, bake sales and fancy dress things and, that kind of stuff. I'd supported military charities, of course. In my first operational tour in Bosnia in the early 90s, we took a load of truckloads of toys over to the orphans over there. And I think that's just been instilled in me from my parents really as well. So all my life I've done fundraising type things, and it seemed quite a natural thing to do, to try and work in the third sector.
It's a really interesting career move, and we speak to people on the show and who perhaps have moved from a corporate world into the charity sector, but this is the first in terms of moving from a career in the armed services into the third sector. Certainly for us on this show, it's a difficult question for me I've got no idea, but is there any similarities? Do you see any? Is there anything in common between your life in the army and your life in the third sector?
I think, of course, it's very, very different, but there are similarities. There's a lot of change. You have to be quite adaptable. I think a lot of the skills I learned in my military career are very transferable to our sector. I feel like I'm very resourceful. If something goes wrong, I can think on my feet. How do we change that or rectify that? I think I'm fairly adaptable, and I'm used to change, and resilience is another thing I've had to learn. And I think in the third sector especially, that's very, very useful to be resilient in your role. I think organisational skills, I think I'm fairly organised, and I think that definitely comes from my military background. The military teaches you leadership skills in bucket loads from a young private soldier all the way up through your career. You have leadership courses and things to do all the time. So I think there is a lot of transferable skills across into the third sector. Remind me of the original question, because I think I've gone off.
Well, that's it. You answered it brilliantly. It's fascinating. Is it just to see those the links between the two? But I totally understand those transferable skills. And out of interest, any of your peers when you were in the army, any of them, are you aware of any of them moving into a similar role or into the third sector as well, or are you on your own in that?
Not into fundraising. I think some have gone on to work for military charities. And actually, I worked for a military charity when I left the army, because, again, I thought that was the natural thing to do, natural progression. But I wasn't in fundraising, and that's what I really wanted to do. So some of my peers have gone on to do other roles within military charities, which is nice to see as well, and use their skills in the sector.
Fantastic. Good to see. Very deserving charities as well, of course. Tell us a little bit about your role today then, and tell us a little bit about the Institute of Cancer Research, and also what a senior philanthropy, I'm getting my tongue around that as well, senior philanthropy manager does. I must admit, looking through sort of job titles, you have a look on job boards and things, it's not a title you see very often, senior philanthropy manager. It's usually senior fundraising or senior major donors or whatever. So tell us a little bit about your role specifically.
The Institute of Cancer Research was formed in 1909 with the Royal Marsden. But then when the NHS was formed in 1948, we had to split away from the Royal Marsden. So the Royal Marsden is a partner hospital of the Institute of Cancer Research. We're across 2 sites, one in Chelsea and one in Sutton. We have 850 brilliant researchers and clinicians doing all kinds of cancer research, from basic molecular cancer research to all the way up to translational research. That's usually a word I can't say. Translational research and clinical trials. We train, I say we, I don't, but the ICR trains half of the UK's oncologists. We have a brilliant PhD studentship programme. And when I arrived at the ICR, I thought each laboratory would look at a different type of cancer. This would do breast cancer, this research laboratory would do prostate cancer, etc. But it's not like that at all. There's so much collaboration across the laboratories. We have centres looking at protein degradation, immunotherapy, radiography, all aspects of cancer research, and they all collaborate together and then look at the different types of cancer within that. So it's quite an amazing place. The breadth and the depth of the research absolutely blows my mind on a daily basis. And we're right at the coalface of the science, if you like. So that's the ICR in a very potted history, I guess. And we've made a lot of discoveries along the way as well. So the ICR was the first to deduce that DNA damage was the basic cause of cancer. We discovered that the carcinogens in cigarette smoke cause cancer. They discovered the BRCA2 gene, which is sometimes called the Angelina Jolie gene. So we've had a lot of discoveries on the way. And we've had 2 successful drug discoveries of abiraterone and capivasertib. One's for prostate cancer and one's for breast cancer. So it's a pretty amazing place to work, and to be doing my role to enable or to help that kind of drug discovery and cancer research happen is just the best job in the world. So to go on to your second question, what is a senior philanthropy manager? I think a lot of charities do have major gifts and philanthropy officers. Sometimes they're one and the same, but I think what do I do at the ICR? My role is to, in a nutshell, build relationships with people who might have the capacity to invest in cancer research and allow those discoveries of the future. In a nutshell, that's what I do. I build relationships with people and network with people and bring them in to see the science. And hopefully that's what they want to do. I know that makes it sound so easy and such a simple job, but in a nutshell, that's what a philanthropy manager does. Manages the program of philanthropy within an organisation.
Such an important job. And I must say, as a cancer survivor myself, I'm hugely grateful to organisations like yours for the amazing work that you do, because I probably wouldn't be here without you guys. So, yeah, hats off to you for sure.
What are the key considerations in your role, Sally, with the key donors, the major donors? What, when it comes to developing and maintaining relationships with them, what's the blueprint for that at the very early stages of a relationship?
Oh my goodness. I think talking to people, and more importantly, listening to them. A lot of people just talk at donors or prospects and go meet them and say, here are all the amazing things, pretty much what I just did to you. This is all the amazing stuff about the ICR, but don't listen to people. Listening to a prospect or listening to a donor is so important because you need to get it right. Another consideration is appreciate the time that it takes to build those relationships. It can take 12 months, 18 months plus to be in a position where either you feel comfortable to ask a prospect for a significant gift, or they want to say to you, okay, I really like what you do. I like your charity. What can I do for you? How much can I give you? What projects can I invest in? So it's really about building the relationships, taking the steps to do that, taking the time and appreciating the time. And I think a charity needs to invest in their major gift program as well, and not just assume that it can just happen or somebody can just do it as a secondary role. It really takes time and investment.
And it's not a quick win, is it? Major gifts are not a quick win.
And that's why it needs to be alongside other income streams as well. I mean, I think Piers, somebody we used to work with at the brain tumour charity, used to say to me, I couldn't do your job. It's too involved with the donors. And she was involved on the kind of individual giving side, where that's lots of people giving smaller gifts, which is equally as brilliant as and important, but it's just the other end of the scale, small amounts of people giving those larger gifts.
I was struck, Sally, because obviously, yes, we have worked together, and the likes of John Royden and some of our major donors that we had at the Brain Tumour Charity, how close you became to them. So you became not just someone who was a representative of the charity, but you became a friend. You became a friend of the family. You held their hand when they needed you, metaphorically and kind of literally, especially when they were doing some of their amazing fundraising, and especially when they've been touched so deeply. I mean, I never saw any of this, but are there conflicts that come up with this sort of relationship? Are there kind of things that you have to then deal with almost on a regular basis, or is it just a case by case?
I think it is a case by case. I've never, thankfully, experienced any real conflict. Sometimes there's little niggles or trickiness, I should say, that, you've got to appreciate the donor has given or might give a significant amount of money. And that's a big deal for them. That's a big decision. And they need to trust you and invest if they want to invest in your cause. And you've got to appreciate that. But equally, you could be a really small team or even a one-man band trying to do everything, and it might just take a little bit longer than they might expect. So it's just trying to balance that, really. But I've been very fortunate not to have had any people that are too tricky. Generally, major donors and philanthropists and people in that position are very nice people. And I do feel, especially in the UK, they get a really bad rap, especially in the press. They either haven't given too much, or they've given to the wrong charity, or they're doing it for their own, egos or wrong reasons. And I don't see any of that. The people I've dealt with all along have just been the loveliest, most genuine, kind people who are passionate in cancer research, either in brain tumours, where Piers and I used to work, or cancer research in more generally, where I am now.
Have you ever found at all that donors perhaps have asked for their money to be ring fenced and spent in a certain area, and that might not be how the charity would want to do that, or perhaps the charity doesn't have a policy of ring fencing at all? What has that often?
Yeah.
Does that come up?
I mean, I can only speak for the charities I've worked for, obviously, and it is different to all charities. But yes, there is a balance between people wanting to restrict their gifts into a certain project, which is brilliant, of course. But equally, charities need to switch the lights on. Charities need to pay salaries and, all of those things. So there is a balance. I like both gifts. I think it's when someone gives you an unrestricted gift, it's actually so humbling because they really trust you. They like the organisation, that's really nice. But equally, I understand that projects are really important to donors as well, and seeing the impact of that project all the way through. So I've experienced both, and both are equally as rewarding and important, I think.
I think that speaks to your particular skill set, Sally, and obviously I'm biased, I've worked with you, but fundraisers and legacy teams and major donor teams across, the skill set is understanding the needs of the donors and the needs of the charity, and making those two line up. And obviously, if it goes well and it's smoothly, then that's quite a straightforward relationship. But the manipulation of different needs is something I guess you have to manage on an individual basis.
Yes, and it's the longevity of these relationships that I particularly enjoy, because somebody might have funded, one project for a couple of years, then they've got to know you more on the charity more, so then they might give you an unrestricted gift. Then there might be a project that comes up that they're going to be particularly interested in. Just go and talk to them about it, and then they might want to do that as well. I think the beauty of being a philanthropy manager is building those relationships with people to a certain point where it's not that uncomfortable to ask. We can be very British and talking about money, and it's a bit scary. But if you've met the prospect or the donor that many times, you know them, you know what inspires them to give, you know what they like, to be in that position to make an appropriate ask is fantastic. And it, like as I say, it can take a long time to get to that point. Once you're there, such an impactful relationship.
Really interesting to hear Sally's thoughts on major donors. We've got the second part of that interview coming up shortly. But before that, Tim, what third sector news have you spotted this week?
Got a couple of really interesting stories this week that caught my eye for a couple of very different reasons. First off, just because I'm fascinated by gifts in wills and legacies, and it's probably an area that we haven't covered enough on the show. Looking forward to covering it a bit more in the future. But this is a story about an RNLI lifeboat that's named after a man who gifted the charity £1.4 million in his will. So a really, really sizable donation and gift, a legacy gift from this one guy. And this was a chap called, he's a professional musician, a chap called Roy Holloway. And he left the vast majority of his savings to the RNLI when he died in June 2014 at the age of 81. I know that seems like quite a long time ago. But now, 10 years after his passing, that donation has helped to fund a new Shannon-class lifeboat for the RNLI's Arklow lifeboat station, which is Ireland's oldest lifeboat station. And the boat has been named Roy Holloway in his honour. Now, that in itself is an amazing story. A £1.4 million gift is incredible and very generous, to say the least. But the amazing thing about this story, and this is the bit that really caught my eye, it's believed that Roy had very little awareness of the RNLI until one Christmas when a friend sent him a card with a lifeboat on the front. The card featured a bright orange boat battling through rough seas, and Roy liked it so much that he brought it out every Christmas to display on his piano. So quite incredible, really. And I think the thing that really struck me about that is that the power of, it wasn't really even marketing, it was a card. He was sent a card, and that was enough to instill something in him that made him think about the work of the RNLI and the work of those volunteer lifeboat men and women and the work they do. And it's so much so that it meant so much to him over such a long period of time that he ended up leaving the vast majority of his estate to the RNLI. So there you go, something to think about for legacy marketers out there.
That's really interesting, Tim, isn't it? Because just before Christmas, we were speaking about Christmas cards, weren't we? And charity Christmas cards, and do the younger generation send cards these days, and how important are cards to charities? And there you go. It's these subtle stories that, okay, this is an old legacy kind of way of doing marketing for charity. It's working. It's still working. It's still important.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, obviously we live in a digital age. We talk a lot about digital in terms of what we can do to market digitally and emails and so on and so forth. But you're right. A simple card in the post, and the RNLI ended up with a £1.4 million gift as a result. So incredible there that old school direct mail marketing still obviously has a place in this world, which is great. Also, just a little quote here. He said, it's understood that he mentioned to family before his passing that he would leave, quote, a little something to the RNLI as he admired the work and bravery of the lifeboat crews. So if I ever got to the stage where 1.4 million is a little something, I'd be very happy. So yeah, amazing story. So that was the first one that caught my eye. The second story, I don't know if you're a Snoop Dogg fan, Piers?
Yeah,
Snoop
got
Dogg,
all his albums.
Dr. Dre. Snoop Dogg has worked with artists including Stevie Wonder. Obviously, he's an A-list celebrity musician. Worked with artists like Stevie Wonder, Katy Perry, Mariah Carey, all the big names. But now a small London charity for people with learning disabilities has joined that list. So the rapper with Dr. Dre sampled a song called Watermelon Fantasy, which was released by the charity Daylight Studio in 2018. And all that has featured on his new single "Out of the Blue." You got it, Piers, on your Spotify?
Oh yeah, I've got it on vinyl and everything.
Anyway, it featured on that single, which was released on the 13th of December. And Watermelon Fantasy is performed by 3 artists with learning disabilities and produced by the founder of Daylight Studio and one of its trustees. Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre have, between them, sold millions of records and have 42 Grammy Award nominations. So, this has taken this small charity to the big time, and the people who featured in it to new heights as well. So Tina Bruins, who features on the track and lives in supported housing in North London, said, "I was shocked. I remember being like, what? I didn't know it was going to be released by Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. I thought it was a fantasy," she said. So imagine that for Tina. What an incredible thing. She's features on this track. She has learning disabilities. She works with this charity. She contributed to this song, and it's been sampled by one of the biggest musicians on the planet. So amazing for her. Just to sort of add to that, in terms of where it's been featured, this song, Out of the Blue, it's been featured in the trailer for Back in Action, a new Netflix film due to be released in January this month, starring Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx. It's been on the American football video game Madden NFL 25 and in an Amazon Music Live series where Snoop Dogg performs songs from throughout his career. So incredible. So there you go. And proceeds from the collaboration will be split equally between Bruins and 2 other artists with learning disabilities. So they are directly benefiting from this single. So the other 2 people benefiting are Mandy Pridis and Cedric Lechu Olembo, with production shares being donated back to the charity itself. So not only are they, obviously receiving incredible profile as a result of this, but hopefully that small charity in London is going to hugely benefit from this worldwide exposure with this Snoop Dogg track. So yeah, amazing stuff. What about you, Piers? What have you spotted in the news?
Great musical start to the year. So mine's a short one, but a really important one. And it was the news this week that is hugely unpredictable, and it's a worrying shift in the landscape, that Mark Zuckerberg has followed Musk with profound changes to Meta platform. So it's early days so far, but Zuckerberg's announcement this week that the platform is, radically scaling back on its content moderation and leaving it to, quote, community notes. I mean, we know how well that goes or doesn't go, sarcastically, similar to the approach that Musk has taken with X. But the implications for comms and the implications for third sector are potentially huge. And it's, this is unfolding news. It'll be very, very interesting to see how this reaches out across everything, but particularly with charities and, the work that we all do. Third Sector magazine, Third Sector website has a quote about it, quite an interesting one. It says, quote, "The move will open the floodgates of disinformation and mean it is more difficult for voluntary sector organisations to moderate online content," something that our respective social teams are going to have to deal with, and the charity comms teams as a whole. So this is something I think we'll be delving into very, very soon in future episodes, and we'd love to get some experts on the podcast to discuss the implications, for all UK charities.
It's it is a fascinating thing to keep an eye on, I think. And I think also I spotted actually yesterday, because this only broke a couple of days ago as we're talking today, this news. And I saw yesterday that Zoe Ammer, who's been a previous guest on the show, charity digital comms specialist, is asking for experts in the field to talk to her and to collaborate with her on this as well. So she's obviously trying to get to grips with the implications of this as well and what it means for the sector. So maybe we can give Zoe another ring, see if she fancies coming back on the show to have a chat about that. But it is fascinating. But also, I think it's really sad if it kind of is going to negatively impact charities in the way that X has, and X has become this place for such hurtful, damaging content. If Facebook follows suit, I think that's a really sad state of affairs, and it opens the door potentially as well for those other smaller social media platforms to come to the fore. Things like Blue Sky. I remember Adela Worley from Charity Comms was talking to us about that on a few shows ago. So yeah, maybe it's time for the big boys to make way for some of the small players in the social world. So yeah, a really interesting thing to keep an eye on, I think.
Hugely shifting sands. Yeah.
Earlier in the show, we met Sally Williams, Head of Philanthropy at the Royal College of Physicians, to find out more about philanthropy and working with major donors. And in the second part of our interview, we wanted to find out what, money aside, success actually looks like for those who work in this particular field, and how charities of all sizes can compete to win over major donors. Sally, what kind of external factors can impact the sort of landscape for philanthropy fundraising? You know, is it things like the cost of living crisis that happened, or a change in government that we obviously seen this year as well? Do those kind of external factors affect your life in terms of make it easier or harder? Are there certain things from outside, pressures from outside that impact?
I think the cost of living, for sure. I mean, if you're talking the charity sector as a whole, I think last year the figures were, haven't got them to hand, but it's something like 13 point something billion that the UK public gave to charities, and that was up from the year before. But it was less donors were giving that, so it was bigger gifts that were being given. Of course, the cost of living crisis is affecting everyone. It's affecting donors, of course. It affects charities because we also need to switch the lights on and pay people, and also the charity sector staff as well, because I think the sector's losing good people because they need higher paid jobs. I think the sector is getting better at paying people well, but, you know, you go and work for a bank, you're going to get a higher salary. So I think, yes, cost of living, of course, affects everyone. But in my world, with major donors, they are still affected, but I would say less so. And actually, some major donors and philanthropists are, because of the nature of what's going on in the country and the world, are wanting to give more and give bigger gifts. So there's, you know, in my world, philanthropy, I think it's less affected by external factors, but of course it is affected.
Sure. And then talking about external factors as well, have you ever had a situation, or how would you approach a sort of ethical dilemma in terms of a donor, perhaps someone approaching you wanting to give who's for whatever reason, the ethics of that donation might not align with the ethics of the organisation you work for? Is that something that's ever sort of crossed your desk, or something you've had to take into consideration? And have you ever turned down a donation on the back of an ethical issue?
So again, I can only speak for the charities I work for, but of course that isn't a concern for all charities across the board. We follow, and I think all charities follow, their own due diligence process. So if you're looking into a prospect and you're thinking about asking someone, you'll kind of see, have they had any negative press? Are they involved with any businesses that might not align with your particular cause and charity? For example, cancer charities probably wouldn't ask someone in the tobacco industry, or possibly even the alcohol industry, because they could be, you know, causes of cancer. So I've never had to turn down a gift, thankfully. Oh, what a horrible position to be in. But I know that if we had a concern like that, or there was an issue that we were kind of undecided about, we could take it to our trustees and follow a whole procedure that's set in place. So I have no qualms about that. I haven't had to turn down a gift, but what I have had to do is stop kind of engaging with someone because they suddenly did have some negative press, and it wouldn't have been good to pursue that person for a major donation, which is really frustrating. But
yeah,
you know,
it happens. It happens, yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sally, just turning to charities and the impact that they have. Obviously, all charities have to demonstrate the impact that the funds that they raise have for the cause that they're supporting. Do you find that's a little bit more acute with major donors? Do you have to pay a bit more attention and delve a bit deeper into exactly where their money will go? Or do you think that's just the same as it is across the types of donations in their charity? And do you have any tips on how you kind of show that impact?
I think major donors and philanthropists, you need to treat them as individuals, because you could have one donor that really doesn't want to hear from you at all year. And it can be hard to kind of ascertain that, because as major donor fundraisers, of course, we want to send them the impact report. We want them to come and see what we do. We want to do X, Y, and Z with them throughout the year. But some don't want that. Some just want an impact report once a year and that's it. Other donors want to be more involved. And I think demonstrating the impact is so important, but also really enjoyable too. It can be very difficult depending on the charity you work for. But But for example, we bring people in to see the science, we bring people into the laboratories. And yeah, of course, it takes a bit of organisation and there's logistics involved, and people might not be able to come from Scotland down to London or whatever. But you can record it, or you can show them the lab on a video. There are other ways to show the impact that don't cost a lot of money. We, at the Brain Tumour Charity, Piers, we contacted some families who had been affected by a brain tumour, and we asked their children would they do some Christmas cards. And it was just an idea a few years ago, and we sent them some blank cards, and these beautiful Christmas cards came back from these children who had then handwritten them, aged 5, or written in there, my father passed away from a brain tumour. I'm not going to get teary. And thank you so much for supporting the charity. And they went down an absolute storm with our major donors. I mean, they didn't really cost very much, and it was hugely impactful. So I think showing the impact doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and doesn't have to be too involved. It can be just such a little thing. But if you were investing that kind of money into a cause or a charity, you kind of want to know where it was spent, and you'd want to know you're investing in the right charity and the right cause. So I think it's really, really important.
A huge point there, Sally, because I think with all donors, really, if you're dealing with celebrities or you're dealing with, a community bake sale, you want to rise above it being a transactional thing. You want them to be with you on the course, to stand beside you, I guess. And that must be true of major donors.
Yeah, and I think you can also use assets from other areas of the charity. If there is an impact report being done for the whole charity, of course you can send that. Perhaps send it with a handwritten note in it to say, I think you'll be particularly interested in page 5, so use the assets that you've got as well.
And that could be harder though, couldn't it? I was just thinking, we were able to do that, and we are able to do that at the Brain Tumour Charity because we're relatively small, our pool of people. But when you get to a bigger charity, when you get to the likes of the ICR, and your supporters and your benefactors are hugely spread out, that must be a bit more tricky then to try and give that personal touch.
I think coming from the Brain Tumour Charity, where, as you say, Piers, I think we did it really well. I say we, I'm not there anymore, but it was done very well. It's just a different way of doing it at the ICR. And actually our fundraising team is not very big for the size of the organisation. We're pretty lean. You look at the likes of the bigger charities, but then they have the expenditure to do it as well. So they might not necessarily have to use assets from other teams.
I'd say as well, just in terms of impact, whether you're big or small in terms of charity size, it's not all about statistics and data and showing how much has been achieved over XYZ time and graphs and all that kind of stuff. It's, as you say, just as those examples of those Christmas cards, it's about the real world, real life impact, real people, real stories. That's what we see at the Firefighters Charity makes a big difference. It's what people really want to see and hear.
And I think donors, again, it's about knowing your donors and listening to them, because some like the statistics and they like to know that X amount in the pound was spent on your charitable objectives, or this many projects happened this year, or they like the numbers. But some really like the case studies. So you either produce an impact report that has a bit of both, or you tailor it to the individual as well.
Whilst we're talking about impact, next question is kind of aligned to that really, but more to do with you and your role in terms of how you measure success. So obviously we talked earlier in the interview about the fact that, this kind of fundraising with major donors is a long-term prospecting really, in terms of, securing that donation down the road. So cash aside and money aside, how do you actually measure success? What's important to you at the end of the year to say, I've achieved this?
Yeah, that is a really tricky question. It's not a tricky question. It's good to answer, but it can be tricky for charities because, we all have budgets to reach and numbers and money to bring in. But that's why it's good to have a diverse income stream, because major donors does take a long time. And, we as major gift fundraisers shouldn't always be measured by we've brought in X amount of pounds. So what I do where I am now, or what we do, is we measure the amount of people we've met face to face. That's my favourite KPI. How many people have I got out there and met? Because if I'm sat in the office behind my desk, I'm that's a bit rubbish. As much as I like my colleagues, I'd rather be out there having cups of tea, having cups of coffee with people, or bringing somebody in to see the laboratory. So it's about number of people I met face to face, number of phone calls, and then the next ones are particular to the type of CRM that we use. We have Razor's Edge, which some people will think is terrible, but it's okay. So it's the number of meaningful interactions, which I always struggle with. It's quite a long term, but it's how many letters have I sent out to that person? How many phone calls have I made? It encapsulates the whole thing, really. How many times have you interacted with that individual? I heard somewhere along the line that it can take 7 or more interactions before a first major gift, which is, quite a lot, really. So we measure things like that. We measure repeat gifts as well. I mean, it's great if someone gives you £10,000 as a one-off, but actually you'd rather they did that every year, ideally. So repeat gifts as well is another metric that we use.
Sure. Can I ask you as well about competition? So we know there's a lot of cancer charities out there. There's a lot of competition vying for donors' money at the end of the day. How do you combat that? And how do you combat a bit of sort of donor fatigue? Because I imagine as well that they must get messages thrown at them and asks from different people, different charities all the time. How do you sort of make sure that the ICR rises above that and that you are heard above that noise?
Yeah, you're right. There are, especially in the cancer space, there's a lot of charities. I mean, you've got the big ones, CRUK, Macmillan, you've got the ICR, you've got Maggie's, and then you've got the individual cancer charities like the Brain Tumor Charity, Prostate Cancer UK, and all of the individual ones. And then you've also got a lot of family charities as well. So there's a whole range of people all vying for that donor space. So I think it's about being authentic, really building those relationships. And we get asked this question all the time, or we get confused and people think we are CRUK and we have to demonstrate, no, we're not actually CRUK. They're a very different beast to us, very different organisation. So it's about building the relationships and taking those steps to make sure people understand who we are, what we do. We mentioned that we do collaborate a lot with people. So CRUK fund us quite a lot. We have the individual charities like the Brain Tumor Charity that will fund projects within our laboratories, and also those family charities as well. They also fund some of our projects. So it's appreciating that donors do get asked a lot by a lot of different people, and if they go elsewhere, then that's okay. That's okay. All we can do is demonstrate what we do, and bring them in and show them what we do.
It's a different tack of question. On a personal level, Sally, are you very philanthropic? See, I said it right then. And what inspires you to give? What do you look for in a cause?
I would love to be a major donor. Love to be in a position to be a major donor.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah. Because I genuinely would give my money away in that kind of capacity if I could. Am I philanthropic? Yes. So philanthropy actually means the love of mankind. It's from Greek mythology or something. I should know this. I just studied philanthropy. But it means love of mankind. So it's not just about giving money. It can be giving your time, your talent, your testimony. They call it the 5 T's of philanthropy. So it doesn't have to be just about giving money. I've recently become a trustee for a very small charity, Veterans with Dogs. They pair fully trained assistance dogs with veterans who need it for mental health challenges. I've just joined my old cadet unit where when I grew up, I was a cadet, to try and help them with their fundraising and bring some money in there. And I do support a lot of charities that are close to my heart. And I think if everybody could support, a few charities in a little capacity as much as they can, the world would be a better place. I support the Dogs Trust, the hospital where my mum went, veterans charities, RNLI, it's the whole range from big to small charities. But yes, I if everybody could do a little bit, then the world would be a nicer place, I think.
That's a definite yes to the question of being philanthropic, isn't it? I love that idea of the 5 T's. I think that's a really important thing you touched on as well, which is a really lovely takeaway, is that it's not just money, or it shouldn't be looked at as just money. It can be a whole range of things that can support, any chosen cause.
And I think that goes back to the donor fatigue as well, is the donors don't just want to be asked for money. ask them for their advice, ask them who their networks are. You know, if they trust you and they like your charity, would they introduce other people to come in and be donors as well? So it's not just about asking them for money. And don't forget that a major donor might also be a marathon runner, might also be a CEO of a company that could get involved and actually might like to do a bake sale. So, you know, people are people and they want to do lots of different things. Don't just treat them as, you know, one thing.
Finally, Sally, we've noticed that you're a regular responder on our Friday Name the Charity quiz that we have with the charity show. But you've done well so far, but are there any that have got you stumped?
Yes. And well, firstly, I must say, I love them. They're brilliant. And the first few, I thought, I'm good at this. And then it went downhill from there. And I tell you, the minute I see it on a Friday morning, I mean, not that I should be looking on LinkedIn when, you know, should be working, but, you know, you spot it on LinkedIn, I can't concentrate until I've got it. It really frustrates me. And some of the simple ones, have really stumped me. And I show my husband and we go round in circles. So I actually wrote down the ones that I thought were quite difficult. Oxfam. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Such a small word.
Yeah.
And also,
lots of people said cow family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. WWF threw me as well. Battersea with the fish and chips. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're brilliant. I love them. Please don't stop doing them.
We won't. Thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
In each episode of the Charity Show, we want to celebrate our sector superstars, those incredible people working, volunteering and fundraising across our sector. And you can nominate your deserving colleagues, volunteers or fundraisers. Just email us at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or get in touch through the links in the show notes. You can even send us a voice message so we can play out in the next episode. This week though, Tim, we've got some rather special superstars to highlight.
Absolutely. We're going to take a close look at the real superstars from the King's 2025 New Year's Honours. Always a fascinating list of recipients, and it's always something that we keep a close eye on, as I'm sure you do at the Brain Tumour Charity, but the Firefighter Charity, we do the same. Also, I want to pass on my congratulations to all those incredible members of the fire services community who were rightly recognised in the King's New Year's Honours, and we listed them all on the Firefighter Charity's website as well. So huge congratulations to all of them. But from the third sector, from the charity world in general, while the celebs might have got most of the headlines, we thought we'd pick out a few very deserving people from the charity world who were rightly recognised. So we've got a quite a long list and we split it between us. So I'll kick off. First off is Michaela Beams, an 18-year-old. She launched her own charity to grant wishes to children with cancer after she was diagnosed with brain cancer when she was only 4 years old. She is still undergoing treatment. Team Michaela has raised £350,000. That's £350,000 since 2014 and has granted 220 wishes for seriously ill children. Michaela from Wantage in Oxfordshire was awarded a British Empire Medal, BEM, and was one of the youngest people honoured this year. So huge congratulations to Michaela and very, very well deserved. On the other end of the age spectrum, the oldest recipient was World War II mosquito pilot Colin Bell, 103 years old. He was awarded a BEM for his charity fundraising and public speaking about Bomber Command.
Sticking with BEMs, military veteran and former nurse John Hardy, 68, he walked 1,000 miles during the COVID lockdowns to deliver prescriptions, despite having lost his eyesight in 2014. Mr. Hardy said half of his BEM, his British Empire Medal, should be awarded to his guide dog Sydney, who guided him around as he made deliveries around his hometown of Bridgewater in Somerset. The Royal Army Medical Corps veteran, who worked as a nurse for 40 years, walked up to 5 miles a day with Sydney during the lockdowns, and also works with several charities, including Blind Veterans UK, the Veterans Breakfast Club, and Dementia Action Alliance. Married couple Gail and Jason O'Shea, both 58, were awarded MBEs for their work with the charity Wipe Away Those Tears, which supports terminally and seriously ill children in Essex. In 18 years, the couple have raised more than 1.5 million and helped more than 1,000 children, including donating specialist equipment to families to help them cope with life-changing illness and disability.
Bereaved mother Wendy Tarpley Morris, I hope I pronounced that right, who created a charity to provide wigs for children undergoing cancer treatment, was also awarded an MBE. She co-founded the Little Princess Trust after her daughter Hannah Tarpley died from cancer in 2005, aged just 5. There was also an MBE for music teacher Nathaniel Dye, 39, who has raised more than £37,000 for Macmillan since he was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2023. He has carried out challenges including running the London Marathon while playing the trombone and walking from Land's End to John O'Groats.
3 parents whose daughters were murdered by their ex-partners were honoured for their campaigning to tackle violence against women. Carol Gould and Julie DeVee co-founded Killed Women after the murders of their daughters Ellie Gould and Poppy DeVee Waterhouse. They were both awarded OBEs.
And there were also honours for many of those leading charities across the UK, including the founder of Roald Dahl's Marvellous Children's Charity and the Roald Dahl Museum and Story Centre, Felicity Ann Dahl. She was awarded a damehood for services to philanthropy, to literature and to young people. Refuge Chair Hetty Barkworth-Nanton has received a CBE for her services to people affected by domestic abuse and domestic homicide. And Andrew Scattergood, Chief Executive of the Royal Parks Charity, has been awarded a CBE for services to heritage and charity.
Renee Olivieri, Chair of the National Trust, has been awarded a CBE. And also someone very close to the brain tumour charity's heart, a huge congratulations to consultant neurosurgeon Professor Kimors Ashkan for much deserved recognition. Dr. Michel Afif, our CEO of the brain tumour charity, said he is a tireless advocate for excellence and compassion in patient care, fearless innovator in care delivery, and a committed supporter to the brain tumour charity. And all those dealing with a brain tumour diagnosis, Ash represents the very best of the NHS, who usually work without public recognition or the expectation it will come, because they are motivated by the patients they serve. Michelle carries on to say she's proud to call him a friend and a colleague. And elsewhere, on the Alzheimer's Society Chief Executive Kate Lee, she was awarded an OBE for services to charity.
RNLI Chair Janet Legrand has been awarded an OBE for services to young people from her time as Chair of the Children's Society. And David Farnsworth, Managing Director of City Bridge Foundation and owner of Tower Bridge, has been awarded an OBE for services to the voluntary sector in London. Tony Collins, meanwhile, Deputy Chair of Hospice UK, has also been awarded an OBE for services to healthcare and community.
The British Heart Foundation's new Chief Scientific and Medical Officer, Brian Williams, has been awarded an OBE for services to medicine. The award is in recognition of the leading role he has played as a scientific and clinical leader in the UK. Elsewhere, Diane Ruddock, External Affairs Manager for the National Trust in Northern Ireland, has been awarded an OBE for services to the environment, heritage and the community. And Alice Hendry, Founder and Chief Executive of Ripple Suicide Prevention, has been awarded an MBE for services to online safety.
Stammer Vice Chair Deborah Johnston has received an MBE for her work around stammering in higher education. And Josephine Seagow and Vanessa Crocker, co-founders of North London-based charity Spread a Smile, have both been awarded an MBE for services to seriously and terminally ill children and their families. And that, I think, completes our list. Hopefully we haven't left anybody off. But I think you agree, Piers, what an amazing bunch of superstars this week. All very well deserved.
Yeah, some incredible charities there, some incredible figureheads and some incredible inspiration for the UK charity sector.
So that's a wrap for episode 17. Huge thanks to Sally for shining a spotlight on the challenging world of major donor philanthropy. And there's plenty more to come as we head into 2025, Piers.
There certainly is. In a fortnight's time, we're going to be joined by 2 young ambassadors to find out what drives them and what advice they'd offer other charities in regard to working with Gen Z's supporters.
I think you and I could do with learning a bit about Gen Z ourselves, Piers, but there we go. We'll find out more in a couple of weeks' time. Don't forget, you can be a part of the show too. Whatever your role in the third sector, just send us your voice messages or get in touch through any of the links in the show notes to share your stories and tell us what you'd like us to cover.
And of course, we also want to know who your superstar fundraisers, volunteers or colleagues are too. So head to the show notes and share their brilliance with the rest of us.
And in the meantime, please follow or subscribe to us on your usual podcast platform and leave us a review, both of which will help others to find the show.
So that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Take care and we'll see you soon.